Leave behind the safety of the Humblewood and travel down the Tangrip coast to the Bay of Palouche, home to both the Kingdom of Den and the Serpent Domain. But neither hold the true power of the bay, for that lies in the sea itself and the pirate lords that call her tides their own. The dread pirate Captain Bluebeak, Tiberius Fang, Kin the Bladeless, and Gabrielle LaFleur, the self-proclaimed pirate queen. Each one vying for power over the very tides themselves. But do any of them really have what it takes to hold up the legacy of the briny bulldog? Tune in each week to find out if our little crew has what it takes to stand up to the pirates of the blood-soaked waters. Dark Fortunes is available every Monday on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Play. Set sail for high seas adventure.
This is Tabletop Babble. I'm James Introcaso. Today on the show, I am talking with the incredible Dan and Quentin from Elderwood Academy. We had an amazing chat about the rise of their company and creativity and all of the cool stuff that they make. Elderwood, you've probably heard me talk about them before because they're a sponsor for this show. It makes all of these amazing gaming products, but the story of who they are and what they do is really, really cool and interesting. So we're going to dive in. Heads up that this was recorded a while back, and we do mention some conventions that Elderwood will be at. Probably not necessarily going to be at those conventions, at least physically. I'm guessing many of them have been canceled. So I hope you all are staying safe, and I am thinking about you. Thank you so much for listening to this show. Here is my interview with Dan and Quentin. Okay, everybody, now I am here with two great creators, game-changing, I might say, professionals in our world. Let's go around the table and tell me who you are and what you do in the world of tabletop role-playing games. Quentin, let's start with you.
Sure. Thanks for inviting us to the podcast. Dan and I are the founders of Elderwood Academy, who we've been making premium wood and leather gaming equipment for 5 years now. It seems crazy. And I also have a little bit of a side gig, which we can talk about later, as a board game designer. And so those of you who played games like Happy Salmon, that's something I've created.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. That's really cool. Yeah, I definitely want to get into that. And how about you, Dan? Who are you and what do you do in the world of tabletop role-playing games?
I feel like my thunder was consumed when I was included in the week. I'm like, Quentin. Yeah, so I'm Dan. I work with Quentin. We're we do that thing that he just said at Elderwood Academy. I would say that I have traditionally mostly been involved in sort of the writing communication side of Elderwood. Although I'm responsible for part of product design sort of here and there. And then I also have a side gig. I'm out here in San Francisco doing medical stuff.
Not a bad side gig to have. Well, that's excellent. It is really great to have you all here. If you could, both of you, please take me back to sort of how you got interested in tabletop gaming. Why don't we start with you this time, Dan, since Quentin stole your thunder last time. How did you get started in this wonderful world of just playing? Like, you know, before you even started Elderwood, how did you get started?
I kind of wonder, I've always sort of wondered, how much of and this isn't meant in a pejorative way, how much of like an autistic streak runs through me. I've always been more interested in like how things work and the like moving parts of toys and that kind of thing. That was just sort of how I was even when very young. I grew up, for part of my childhood I was deaf and I was very isolated, and I wonder how much that played a role in being interested in just sort of in general worlds of like fantasy and imagination and goofing around. And I can't really remember a time when I wasn't interested in thematically sort of the things that are present in like Dungeons and Dragons. When I was very young, like some of my early memories are my dad reading me like Isaac Asimov and Tolkien and that kind of thing. I think it all grew out of that, but I honestly don't have a there's no moment that I recall like falling in love with games. It was just, as far as I know, it was always a thing that I've been exposed to and was completely mad for.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's very cool. That's like great that it's like, yeah, I just always loved them. I was born with it. So yeah. How about you, Quentin?
I think in some ways I was kind of born into it too, but I think for different reasons. Two of the most influential people in my life who I've happened to have known my entire life, my brother Marshall and my one of my best friends Ken. Both of them, Ken's family has a gaming streak, and my brother also. He's a year and a half older than me. We're very close, and so much of the things that I've chosen to do in life were like watching my brother do stuff and be like, "Huh, that looks cool. I want to do that." And he's been very generous his whole life about including me as a little brother, even as I mess his stuff up and get in the way and interfere with his friends and stuff like that. But both of them, for independently had gaming in their lives, and it really just roped me in. And the fun and challenges of both thinking things through and planning has been just really invigorating for me. And there's also, I mean, just the fun factors of being social around a gaming table with people that you care about has just always, it's always struck me. And I know my particular brand of nerd happens to be in the board gaming era more so than tabletop. I say era, but I really mean, the board game niche. So I feel very fortunate that my family's been supportive of all of the stuff that I've done regarding games. And I should also mention that, it's actually extended outside of, board games was a portion of it, but growing up playing video games, watching my brother play StarCraft when I was a little kid, and then starting to play StarCraft, and then Ken also in some ways dragged me through playing soccer, which I loved. I shouldn't say dragged, but playing soccer through school. And so there's a lot of sports that I'm really passionate about playing, and so anything that you can kind of compete in, either cooperatively or competitively, I really enjoy.
That's funny that you say that, Q, because it's very apparent that we enjoy a pretty big overlap of games, but for different reasons. And you saying you're you're totally on the money with what I've observed. You really like the mechanics, the like game aspect of things, and the social aspect of it. And I mean, I like that stuff too, but I'm all about like getting swept away in the fantasy of whatever it is. Like even if it's like a tower defense game, it's like, yeah, I'm like these little guys, I'm like little cannons fighting off, demons or whatever. There's a total kind of wish fulfillment aspect of it for me that I feel like is we just really we appreciate very different things, even though we kind of converge very much on what we actually end up enjoying.
That's a really interesting observation. I wonder how much of it you just talked about, how a lot of your love and passion for this came from reading books as a kid
Mm-hmm.
or having your dad read books to you. And, books are 100% about the immersion.
Yeah.
That's what it's at. And whereas I think I really took after the personality of, particularly, I mean, my brother Dan, and
Mm-hmm.
he is a computer programmer by trade, and I have a lot of respect for his ability to intellectually attack problems. And I think when he plays games and stuff, whether it's a video game or a board game or anything like that, it's like that's how he attacks those things. And I have no doubt I learned by watching him do stuff, and that's kind of how my passion arose.
Oh wow, that's really cool, and a cool partnership then between the two of you that has sort of come together to create Elderwood Academy. For people who don't know, what is Elderwood Academy and how did it start?
You want to field this one, Dan?
So this was one of those things that we were talking about, me like tricking Quentin or peer pressuring Quentin into earlier. So Elderwood Academy, we're a small, basically wood, leather, metal crafting company. What we do is we make accessories for mostly for narrative-driven board games, generally like Dungeons and Dragons, Pathfinder, although we also do things for Magic the Gathering. And our goal is to make, initially was to make really nice, what looked like handcrafted or what were handcrafted wooden leather gifts for one another or for ourselves that has become a full-fledged business. And so in 2014, we started making, initially we started just, okay, let's back up. So 2014, Quentin and I are friends. I'm taking time off from school. I'm whining at him to like help me with a project or two. Quentin's very skilled. He shows me how to build stuff in a workshop. I was like, "This is cool. Can we do more of this?" He's like, "Yeah, sure. What do I have to lose?" It's sort of. I saw that as a great
Little did I know.
opportunity for me. Yeah, 5 years later, 6 years later. So I was like, yeah. Quentin's like, yeah, sure. I'll throw my time into this and like teach you things. And eventually we started making our first product, text chests, that people that we were in a shared workspace got excited about. And we ended up sharing that, or Quentin's girlfriend ended up sharing that on the internet, and it got some traction. And we were like, well, we could run like a Kickstarter out of this. And then the Kickstarter went for what we never done anything like that before. It went well. And so that started the snowball rolling. And we just kept designing and making wood and leather gifts that people seemed interested in. So that basically was that's kind of the origin, more or less. That might be too many details, or even too few, but that's kind of what happened.
Gotcha. Yeah, I know. I got on board with your first spell book. I think Kickstarter was when I first found out about y'all, and bought a spell book and everything. And it was amazing. It was really incredible to follow that Kickstarter, because I think that one blew up for you, and there were updates about you all like changing your workshop around to accommodate the new workflow and hiring people and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that one was a mess.
Oh my god. Yeah. The Spellbooks Kickstarter was hands down a mess. And it kind of right from the start, we didn't have an understanding of how big that was. And when we originally launched the Kickstarter, just based on our experience with the Hex Chest, we were sort of expecting we were expecting to fund somewhere between like, I don't know, 25,000, or if it did really well, maybe $80,000. And we were going to kind of run the same playbook that we did with Hex Chest, which was, yep, we're going to get orders for several hundred of these. We're going to make them and send them out. And when we did like 72,000 on the first day, we had this moment of like, at first it's like thrilling. You're like, oh my God, this is awesome. We've never seen anything like this. And that moment carried through the rest of the Kickstarter until, the money comes in, and it's like, hang on, guys, you have 2,500 spell books to make. Let's just do some basic math. How long is that going to take to make? And at that point, Dan was in his residency in San Francisco, and so it was me in a shop. And I'm looking there like, all right, I'd be at this for a couple of years by myself. And so that was the moment it forced us to start scaling up the company, and not in many different ways. We had to scale both. We didn't really have a shop, and we didn't have staff, and we didn't have like training programs or anything like that. And having to go through all the learning curves of, 1, how do you build a shop? 2, how do you actually run a business? 3, how do you hire and train people? And 4, like, you have a project that is 6 to 10 times larger than you thought it was, and you're trying to deliver that on schedule. And juggling those things, just, man, I got to say, if there was a year that killed me, that would have been that year. And I feel really grateful to all of our Kickstarter backers who like watched us go through those growing pains and had patience with us to be like, okay, yeah, it's still happening. And like, this is just, they're having all these growing pains. And if anybody, Dan got a good window into this because we're on the phone regularly, but being on the inside of watching that grow was really intense.
Yeah, I mean, with Hex Chest, we had like 1,000 units to make, and we were like, okay, we're just gonna buckle down. We spent like 2 or 3 months, the two of us and a couple of high school students, like helping out, and Quinn's parents helped out. And we're just worked long days. We're gonna get this done. It was exhausting, but it didn't take forever. And then with spellbooks, I want to say Quentin had made like 6 spellbooks before we like launched the campaign. I mean, this was like early days when we were kind of doing it in a way what Kickstarter is designed for, like get the money to go do a project before you've really figured out all the details. But I mean, we didn't even know how to like get art on the covers of the books. We were kind of speculating that would be easy.
Right.
That was like a whole thing. Like, oh my God. So we like really didn't know what we were doing, and to some degree, like that is the spirit of like invention that Kickstarter is so cool for. But as a business, it's like, oh my goodness, what a foolish way to. It's like, okay, I think I can do this for this price and with this amount of work, and it'll have this many sleepless nights to get it done. We had like no idea. So these days we're a little bit more disciplined about having at least our core processes figured out before we offer to sell something.
It's fascinating, right? Because these are huge now. I feel like, especially as role-playing games have grown in general, the industry of things that support role-playing games, certainly dice are huge, but also people making these amazing handcrafted products like you do, I think are bigger, which is a great thing. It's great to see opportunities like this come up for everyone. How have you handled the growth? Because it does feel like your company sort of continues to scale up.
That's been a really interesting challenge, and we've grown, not explosively in the same way that you look at some of the software startups like Google or something like that, but we've had these moments where like the business doubles in size, and both internally how many staff we have working as a team together, but also externally in terms of how many customers we are responding to and trying to get stuff out to. And scaling, it turns out, is like not an easy thing to do. It's been interesting to try and stabilize a company at the same time grow it. And I I gotta say, like, I mean, Dan, not to just speak for you, but Dan has a much better sense of like starting and scaling a company than I did, and I have a much better sense of like how to manage projects and get the things done. Is that fair, Dan?
That's very flattering. I mean, I'll take it. Sure. Yeah.
And a lot of the things that, as you've watched Elderwood grow, Dan being in residency meant that the guy who kind of has understanding of how to scale businesses is like not as available as the guy who's just trying to get things done. And that really like reflected, we were just trying to like, in a lot of ways, just be scrappy at getting, it's like we run a Kickstarter, we're just trying to get everything out the door on time. At the same time, we're responding to, making sure our convention team is out with product, and, we're not sending them out to a show with nothing. At the same time, we're responding to like our website orders and wholesale partners and making sure that we're actually delivering things for people. And for the first 4 years of our company, scaling was entirely about how do we produce stuff well? How do we produce quality product at scale as a team? And we've finally answered a lot of. It's taken us 4 years to answer those questions in pretty resounding ways. So and it's been really exciting that the staff here. It's been wonderful to watch them grow and be involved with the company and see all of the nuances of their skills building. So it's been really a pleasure to be a part of, and it has not been without challenges. That's for sure.
Yeah. Some of that stress that you're hearing in Quentin's voice is what I feel guilty about getting him roped into this business. I think if we had made some stuff on our own and left it at that, that would have been fine. If we launched a Kickstarter and it hadn't gone well, then fine. Then no Elderwood, but sort of good luck. Our Elderwood's good luck has sort of been Quentin's mixed luck, and so we've ended up. Quentin is the biggest victim of our success, I want to say.
I should also comment on that I'm very appreciative for this opportunity and all of the things that I've been able to learn from Dan in trying to grow this business, and I really do value it. And I would also say I wouldn't wish my experience upon anybody. It is it's been a lot of work, and I have a kind of personality where I'm attempting to please everybody around me, and there just are situations in businesses where you have to make choices. If you have a staff member who's not working well as a team, you're gonna have to make some choices about that staff member, and like, are you going to pick the team? Are you going to pick the staff member? Are you going to try and thread the needle and make sure that everybody can get back on the same page together? And it's that those have been interesting growth experiences. You never know kind of who you are until you've really been challenged like this, and it's certainly opened my eyes as to what sorts of capabilities I have and what sort of capabilities I don't have. Also, there's definitely been a handful of skills that I've learned I just am not great at doing.
So with all of this in mind, that like it sounded like it started as we have this cool idea for a thing that we want to make, and oh no, now we have a company.
Yeah, that's a very good summary. I wish I just said that.
So are you all making things with your hands still, or is that now left to other people while you are focused on the company aspect?
We are not making much ourselves by hand, and I gotta say, I find making things with my hands very cathartic, and I miss it. I know there's a little bit of a difference between making 10 things a day versus making 200 things a week, in terms of how engaged and intense that experience is. But I really do find it satisfying to go through a process and end up making something that looks cool. So I miss it, and I kind of wish I could do it, but I also know that that would be a really bad business decision.
We still do. I mean, when we do product design, we're often making the prototypes and working through the processes. Ultimately, Quentin is very, very strong at turning a process into something that reliably produces something nice. When we first started doing this, neither of us really knew much about what we were doing. And so a big part of our goal was, how do we make a process that is so, it's like unscrew upable? Like, how can we make it so that we produce the thing that we want reliably? Like, oh, if we use like, this jig, it's easier to keep the wood grain and the alignment that we like at the end of the day, from little things to sort of broader design choices. And a lot of that comes into play regularly when a new product gets designed. It's like, yeah, how do we try to engineer? And again, a lot of this is Quentin, is like, how do we engineer what we're trying to do so that anyone stepping into this role is able to make something that looks really nice and looks like something that we would want to own ourselves. So that ends up consuming the process of that just ends up consuming a lot of mental bandwidth and a lot of time, but it ends up requiring us to do the work initially on our own. But the goal is that anyone could pick up that torch and continue that legacy if they were exposed to whatever approach we'd used.
Gotcha. What is that like? How do you get your ideas for a new product? Because you really do have a lot of various things. Everything from dice and deck boxes and these dice tower codices and the rolling trays to dice catapults, which are extremely impressive and are very good for launching dice at the face of your friends.
A lot of the raw creative energy comes from Dan. And so, Dan, you should speak on that in a minute. And I vision a lot of my role in this is having the understanding of how to start turning an idea into a process and start turning that process into something that can create things. And, a lot of that you think about the core competencies. What can we do? How can we do it? What's efficient? How can we teach people how to do it? And a lot of my part in the design is sort of creating these constraints and blending these constraints into the raw creativity to actually come up with something that's fun and unique. And I know for both of us, like, there's a lot of cool stuff out there. The market really has grown, and there's so much cool gaming stuff out there. And we really have, we're really interested in bringing stuff that's new and unique to the table. So usually when we have ideas, and we're talking about DM screens right now, and it'd be one thing just to put out a DM screen, but ideally it's something that offers some new capability or some new ideas or a take on it, so that it's something that adds to the marketplace instead of just like, elbows a little more room into the marketplace for itself. So I don't know, Dan, you want to talk about any of the raw creativity? I'm actually kind of curious myself.
I mean, first of all, I think you're overselling it. Like, spellbooks, it's like 85 to 95% just popped into Quentin's head fully formed. He was like on a plane. He was like, we'll do these books. It's like, all right. I think a couple things happen. Sometimes I wake up or I just like look up at the sky and I'm like, oh, I'd love to do these 8 things. I think these would all be fun. Sometimes it's designing against constraints. I can't remember. There's some phrase in filmmaking, I want to say. It's like something through adversity, creativity through adversity. I don't know. Where constraints can actually help you, like solving a constraint can actually help you become more creative. So it's like, what, question one, what hasn't been done in the gaming space? Or, what is a common problem that gamers face? Like, oh, the blank, the dice are always flying off the table. Okay.
Hearing you talk about this, I also realize that a lot of the time when you come to me with ideas that you want to share, it's because of a play experience you've had. It's like, yeah, I'm finding it really annoying to have to keep track of my spell slots and like do this kind of stuff. Like, I want to start working on this. And so you just start making stuff to try and answer those questions.
It's not always annoying either. It's sometimes it's just aspirational, like, and real in really stupid ways. I definitely lean into my preferences a lot, and I couldn't tell you where my preferences come from, but they are extremely specific and demanding, and I don't expect anyone else to have them. But like, I like having really thin tipped dry erase markers. That's something that I like, and for whatever reason, that's important to me. Apparently, I mean, if we walk through our products, like Hex Chests, Quentin says he doesn't remember who came up with it. I don't, or says we both came up with this. I honestly don't remember, but that was a simple thing of what's like a cool board game thing that we can do out of wood. Well, everybody or lots of people use dice. Let's make something to hold dice. And for spell books, like I said, the way I remember it, Quentin basically called me up and was like, I've got our next product. It's like books. And I was like, I'm sold.
That was when I was visiting San Francisco. I was on the plane to San Francisco when I drew up all those things.
Cool.
And we chatted about it when I got there.
You slept on the floor.
Yep.
For Scroll and Codex, I remember for Scroll, I don't have a clear memory, but I vaguely recall something like Quentin took me aside. I was like, come on, man, you got an idea, tell me what it is. He wouldn't tell me. He's like, all right, check this out. And he put a little piece of leather down and put some 1/8-inch wood on the sides. It's like, that's a rolling tray. My mind exploded. I was like, that's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. Which, looking back, I mean, it still is. It's it's a piece of leather with some wood glued to it. I don't remember Codex. I can't remember. I remember being really dissatisfied. Oh wait, I can remember Codex. Codex was supposed to be the way that we stored the rolling tray. That was the idea. We were coming up with cool ways to we could do a scroll case that would hold this thing, and then eventually we should probably just make the thing functional itself as well. It was almost an afterthought, and is now one of the more kind of recognizable products I feel like that we make.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. I just wanted to take a quick break to let you know that this episode of Tabletop Babble is brought to you by Cobalt Press. Now, Cobalt Press. I've talked about them a lot. They are the makers of fine 5e products. Yes, 5e products that are play-tested, well-edited, and designed by some of the industry's best. Like Dan Dillon, who is now a full-time staffer at Wizards of the Coast. James Hake, who's a full-time staffer at D&D Beyond. James Intricasso, who is the third of the bunch who doesn't really necessarily fit in, but you're listening to him right now. Cobalt Press has a full line of 5e titles, from the Tome of Beasts to the Guides to Game Design to hundreds of adventures, map packs, and more. They're available in both print and PDF or in money-saving bundles. Virtual tabletop versions are also available for Roll20 and Fantasy Grounds. Orders ship within 24 hours while supplies last. You can find out more at cobaltpress.com and tell them DSPN sent you. Let's get back to the babble. What about the catapult? I gotta know, how did this come to be? Because it's certainly not a lot of the things you make are, I would say, pretty much all of them are extremely functional tools that you'll use at the table. The catapult is really just fun.
It's heartening to hear you say that, because that was the original intent. And this actually goes back to, Ken, who I talked about before, he's actually my partner in board game design when we work on board games. And usually the thing that we're talking about is what is fun? What is exciting? It's those are the two questions that we always are answering when we talk about board game design. And we had a concept, God, I want to say this is 4 or 5 years ago. And we needed a cat. People can throw things, but it's hard to kind of come up with some regulations about where can their hand be and stuff like that. So the thought was all right, what if we were giving people a catapult and they're launching these objects with a catapult, so that creates some constraints and some uniformity about how this is happening. And The game itself was like fine. It was a little bit too gamey for what it was. It was like too rules oriented, and it didn't really focus. The fun part was like knocking each other's stuff over with the catapult. And so I built this little catapult for this game design, and I was in Chicago visiting Ken to play it, and Ken's fiance, now wife, is she was like, "I like that catapult. Could I have one?" And so I was like, "Sure." So I made her a catapult, and we had some pretty stupid nights with grapes and those catapults, but and my girlfriend at the time and now fiance, she also was like, "I like that catapult too. Can I have one?" And so I made her one also, and
This sounds like they were building an army to pelt you with dice later on.
hey, wake up. So, so the light kind of went on when I was hearing that. I was just like, oh, people really like these things. And the game that Ken and I created wasn't, great, but the catapult seemed to be a hit. And so this brought in, there was a loot company that we worked with, and we pitched them the catapult as a loot idea of like, yeah, this is like a small, $5 item that could come in a loot case. And so as Elderwood, we ended up making like 500 or 600 of these things for this guy. And then, we started selling the packs to make them yourself at conventions, and they're just a silly amount of fun. So people enjoy them, and we keep carrying them.
I never believed in them, by the way. So hugely gratifying for Quentin that people legitimately enjoy them. I was just like, you guys are crazy. You got this box. You can own a box. Why do you want to own a catapult? But yeah, I totally didn't get it. So occasionally Quentin and I disagree about what's going to be well received. And we have these days, I would say the last couple of years, it's been less so. But back in the early days, we had these very hot-blooded arguments about what was or wasn't. A lot of it focused around design concepts. Is this worth pursuing? Is this something we should spend our time on? And I am very opinionated, which Quentin probably didn't know before this podcast, but
it's one of the things that I love about you all. It doesn't seem like you spend a lot of time trying to chase what is hot or popular or that kind of thing, that you are all about making what appeals to you. And because you make it so well and because the idea is great, it catches on. Rather than sort of trying to chase the trend, you're setting the trend. Do you all feel that way? That is something that you do? Like, are you doing a lot of, I don't know, watching what other people are doing and that kind of thing?
We're like not very aware of what else is out there. Often we're very focused on what's in front of us or what the next idea is, and it's not good business practice, but we feel very consumed by what we're doing, and so frequently we're acting almost in a void. And this last year, I mean, Quentin was talking about how the first 4 years were really getting process locked down, and this past year has been one of the first year. I mean, I've felt that a little bit too, and this past year was one of the first years where I have been able to look around a little more and start interacting with other people in not just a cursory sense, but actually investigating what's going on around me, which has been really nice. It's really inspirational to see how much diversity there is, everywhere, and not just D&D and Magic the Gathering, but like, every niche, like miniatures game or horror game, whatever, that kind of thing. I'll also say that if we don't feel genuine enthusiasm for what we're doing, it is I think it's apparent to others. When we're launching a product, the like enthusiasm that you read and the notes that you read, and or if you read stuff, that kind of energy behind what's going on is generally reflective of our actual enthusiasm for whatever it is. And if we don't feel excited about something, we can make stuff we don't feel excited about, but it is a real uphill battle for both of us. Yeah, gosh, I guess we don't play the game of like product design very well. We aren't as strategic with products as we probably should be. Outside of, if we have 10 ideas, we try to pick the ideas that fit the general aims that we're going for. Like, hey, wouldn't it be great to work in this material, or wouldn't it be great to tackle something? We've done 2 iterations of blank. Wouldn't it be great to tackle a completely different problem? We've done dice trays now. Let's see if we can tackle whatever, dice themselves, that kind of thing. And so there's like a mix of novelty in there, but I'd say it all goes back to if we feel passionate about something, then the authenticity comes through, the energy comes through. If we feel kind of ho-hum about a product, it becomes much more difficult to work on. And that may be the root of some of Quinn and I have these like hot debates about what we think we should do or want to do. And some of that is like neither of us really wants to work on something that we're really not excited about. When it's already, I mean, it's hard work. Like Elderwood's like a legitimate amount of work, despite the fact that the space is like fun and what we end up doing is fun and we get to work with fun people. The audience is great. It is work. And so if it's work plus it's like something that you're even just a shade less enthusiastic about, it can really compound that feeling of this is hard. Why am I doing this? As opposed to like, this is hard, but it's totally worth it.
It's interesting because I think that's a strength. You're saying it like, yeah, we didn't do a lot of looking around. It does seem like it's a strength to me in that you all are putting out stuff that you're passionate about, because I do think it excites other people and it shows in your work.
So we originally made these hex chests when they got popular on Reddit. We ran a Kickstarter on hex chests, and then we got done with the project of the Kickstarter. And it was kind of like, all right, where do we go from here? Like, what is the goal? And we had some conversations, and Dan was very generous in allowing me to sort of, again, Dan had some understanding of how to scale businesses and how to build these things. And I was much more like, yeah, we like accomplished the product, like high five. And one of the things we talked about is that as a company, we wanted to add fun to the gaming space. And if that's what we were doing, then we were being successful. And it wasn't necessarily about like, yeah, let's try and make a bunch of money doing this. And we regularly are making business decisions that are like bad financial business decisions, but help add fun to the gaming space because that's what we're trying to do. That's, I guess, one of the other things that I would add is when we're thinking about products that we're designing, it's like we don't want to just get something out there to make a buck. It's like we want to add something fun that creates new options, new places for people's imagination to live, and allow them to be more immersed in their games. So that's I think part of what you're seeing is might be some of that attitude that we really want to add to the space.
Yeah, I think that's really very cool and very great, because it does feel very additive when you all are putting out your stuff. What, like, the amount of time that goes into something like a hex checks or a spell book or a codex dice tower, what goes into that? Because I think I have no idea, right? Like, I show up and buy something at a convention and it's fully formed and it's there. I've talked to people who work for you, like Andy, who's amazing. What goes into, like, what level of production are we talking? How many hours go into some of these products?
That's a interesting question, and also strikes to the fundamental challenge is how do you make something cool, but then it turns out that if you spent like a week making something cool, you'd have to sell it for $1,000. The price you have to pass on to the customer just increases to be able to actually run a business with it. So one of the things that we have to balance is like we want to make stuff that warrants this like cool factor, but still allows us to make stuff consistently and efficiently. So when you look at like the codex, it's like the codex is made of. So for those of you listening, this is our dice tower. It kind of looks a little bit like a scroll case. It's got some caps that twist and remove, and the codex is a bunch of laser cut parts. So we sort of leverage the technology in a laser to make stuff that's repeatable and consistent. But then that gets hand assembled. So somebody actually has to sit and they glue every single piece together, and then they assemble all of the caps together with the walls to make the actual tube that forms the codex. And when you look at somebody at the station, you're like, God, that's got to take like 3 or 4 hours. Like, that's an intense amount of work. But we've put a huge amount of time and investment into how do we make these things efficiently, and we've got a whole bunch of jigging setups that allow that. And so somebody who's skilled at making codexes, you should be able to go from a pile of laser parts to a complete assembled thing in about 45 minutes.
Wow, that is amazing. That is really very, very impressive. Quentin, we've talked about you as a game designer, that you do a lot in the board game world and that kind of thing. Do you ever do anything in the tabletop role-playing game world as far as game design goes?
That's a really interesting question. And we're just talking about how at Elderwood, we do a lot of things where it's not exactly a great financial business decision, but it adds fun to the space. Um, it's it's not exactly a role reversal for game design, but there's definitely anybody who's in the game design world professionally, the size of the mass market versus the size of the hobby market is like 10 times bigger. It's a huge difference. And so if you're able to design games that really connect in a mass market level, the chances of a success actually allowing you to do this professionally, bringing in enough income and royalties to do that, are fairly real. And to do it at a hobby level, so you're making games that have more gamery components, um, the level of success you need to have to make that into like real income that allows you to do it professionally is, we're talking that, top 0.1%. It's very challenging to, you either have to be incredibly prolific and be hitting, hobby game after hobby game after hobby game, or you have to have a couple of those games like Azul or King Domino or something like that, where it is really, it has a really broad audience. It sells really well in the hobby market. And so when it comes to designing stuff for tabletop, um, it's just not the skills that Ken and I have developed together. And we've really focused a lot on, rather than investing a huge amount of time in any particular game, we invest lots of micro chunks of time into any. Do you want to take a guess how many game concepts we go through every year?
Oh, I am going to guess 50.
Sort of close. So I'm going to say we go through about like 500 to 700 per
Oh
year.
my God, not at all close.
So, and a lot of these things are, it's like, it's a quick idea that we chat through. And again, we're just looking for like, what's the fun, what's exciting, what makes this click. And of those 500 to 700, probably only half of those get to a point where we actually want to invest 20 minutes into having a conversation about the idea. And the other ones we sort of, we'll look at the idea and be like, this just isn't there. And so we've really developed a process that speaks really well towards, family games, party games, and mass market type games. And that type of process does not speak very well to a game in tabletop or hobby where you need to invest the huge amount of hours into, playtesting, tweaking, making sure all the mechanics work well together. So it's actually a very different. Dan and I regularly talk about, is there some way that this game design life that I live with Ken should interact with Elderwood? And so regularly the answer is like, yeah, it's just they're kind of, even they're in the same ballpark. They're kind of different games. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm just saying, I would buy an Elderwood board game that had a bunch of custom wood and leather pieces and pay lots and lots of money for it. So, there's one vote in your corner.
well, thank you. We've Ken and I occasionally pitch ideas around, and we occasionally show stuff to Dan. But there may be a day when those two bridges want to get merged together. But again, we talked about how at Elderwood most of the focus has been how do we actually get the production question answered. And now that we're getting to a point where that is actually getting answered, I think it's going to allow us to spend more time and energy on the creativity of the business and bringing hopefully new products to life. And we may explore some of those things sometime soon.
There are a couple games that Quentin and Ken have made that I would love to actually have as like a real product in the world. And there's some top secret projects that they're working on right now that I'm very enthusiastic about. I'm eagerly biding my time until I can steal, the first printings. But just between you and me, Quentin, that game with like different like gold and silver dice and stuff, and you steal other people's things and you become like a wizard or whatnot. Is that going to be a thing?
That is not going to become a thing, at least in its current standing.
All right.
We've
What about that game where you had cards and you like cast spells and we kept beating the crap out of Stefan at that retreat? Is that going to be
I remember that. That is also currently not going to be a game.
All right, that's cool. That's great. I thought they were both dumb anyway, so I don't want to play those again. It's fine.
I mean, both funny comments, but also it does speak a little bit to what I was talking about. It's like, yeah, when you review 700 concepts in a year, you play test a lot of things where you just get to the point where you're like, yeah, there's some fun factors here, and it just doesn't have what it takes to be something that's successful.
I think the stuff that you design, even the stuff you consider to be like half benchable, it like so easily gets me excited. Like some of those games just immediately arouse all of my interest, and I'm like on the edge of my seat immediately. I feel like I'm a receptive audience for a lot of those things that you make.
Dan, that actually comes full circle to what we were talking about originally. Is your interest in gaming stems from the immersive quality, the getting your imagination kind of unlocked in the game. And for so many of these concepts that you've seen come by and you've playtest, I think you latch onto those things in that way where you're like, I understand what I'm doing, and I'm invested personally in getting this done. And then I'm bringing this concept of like, yeah, the mechanics just aren't smooth enough. There just isn't quite enough like go power to make this exciting at a base level for people. So I don't know if that's exactly what's going on here, but that may be a contributing factor.
I could see that. I mean, you also, even your throwaways are better. Even your leavings, your table scraps are better than any game I've designed. So I mean, I think you're also just skilled at what you do. I think it's not entirely just that I'm blindly enthusiastic for all things. I will say that I've been trying to, James, to address your point of like kind of how do the worlds cross. I've been trying to, I guess the word trick might be too strong. I've been trying to compel Quentin and Ken to join me for slightly informal discussions about the game mechanic side of D&D, like to try to get their input on how would they approach things that often are addressed like in homebrew or in modules. How would they in their game design hat look at mechanics in D&D? How would they make them more fun? Partly selfishly because I want to have more fun playing D&D, but also just they're smart guys. This is something that they are 5 to 6 700 products a year. One becomes an expert or stops doing that thing. So I think they're quite expert at what they do. And I'd like to apply that to the gaming space that Elderwood is sort of more firmly situated in. And then if that goes well, maybe they'll start to, maybe they'll come up with something for all of us in the nerdier side of things, the less mass marketing. Say, I'm just saying it's possible.
Well,
that would be great.
It certainly worked once for you, Dan. So
yeah, hey Quentin, can you help me with this thing?
I just love how nefarious you make your relationship to Quentin sound, Dan. Like you are some sort of manipulative overlord.
Yeah, I like to. That's a great way to put it, Quentin. I would prefer that you refer to me as your manipulative overlord from now on. That'd be.
It's just like, are you asking for a new title, or does this come with a pay raise too? I'm not really sure.
Yeah, we can write that in. I feel. I'll be honest, James. You're probably getting those vibes because I feel mixed. I feel very guilty about pulling Quentin to a life that he is to some degree on board with, but most likely would not have opted into if I had never existed. And so I feel a lot of responsibility for actions, both good and bad, and bad and bad and bad, that may be a consequence of, me being involved in Quentin's life. I don't think I've influenced a friend's life this much ever. I mean, to my knowledge anyway. And that burden feels high. So I joke about it, but I'm kind of racked with guilt whenever something goes like awry and Quentin is unhappy about something. And I'm like, oh gosh, that's like that's on me. I did that. It's my fault that we're in this situation. As an example, like early on with spellbooks, there were a lot of delays. We did not know what we were doing, and we ran into lots of problems. And it was really distressing to make things that were not good. And some of our very generous backers who were like sold on the same vision that we were sold on were like, hey, yeah, we're like totally in on this vision, but this thing that I've gotten is not good. That was like heartbreaking and very upsetting for both of us. And I felt really like just racked with guilt whenever we'd get an email like, hey, I really wanted to believe in both of you. You had this dream of this like vision that seemed really cool. And what you have delivered is not what I wanted. And I hope it's like not what you wanted. And, sometimes phrased politely, sometimes phrased more honestly. Those moments like that would not have happened if I hadn't pulled at Quentin's strings and dragged him into this. So yeah, I mean, I'm not, Quentin's his own guy. He's got his own brain, makes his own decisions, but if I had never started trying to steer him in this direction, then none of the good stuff would have happened, but none of the bad stuff would have happened either.
Gotcha. Quentin, do you hate Dan forever?
Yeah, I feel on the whole, I feel very appreciative about the experience that I've had at Elderwood and the experience I've had with our customers, all of the things I've learned from Dan, all the things we've learned together by going through a lot of these rocky roads. And it's again, it's changed who I am a lot. It's like 5 years ago, I was like a different person, and my brain acts differently now, and it's in some ways it's very bizarre, but on another level, I'm wholly more capable as a person, and I really appreciate the lessons I've been able to learn here, and I, I'll forever value that. And Dan's right. This isn't running this business is not exactly my true passion. I really care a lot about things like education, and as an engineer, it's like engineering education, and those are the things that I would really want to invest my time and resources into. But obviously, right now, that's not something that really I have opportunities to do. And for a little while, and it's absolutely fine. And we all spend a lot of time in school in life, and even when we're out of school, we spend a lot of time still learning through jobs we're doing, through social groups, through hobbies. And this last 5 years has been like a just this whopper learning experience. And again, it's like, this could have been easier if we'd done it over 10 years instead of 5, but then it's like a 10-year investment to learn the same lessons. So I don't begrudge the intensity at all. It's just, yeah, it's been an intense thing, and there's been a lot of fun, and there's been a lot of difficult things and heartbreak. Um, and at the end of the day, I feel like I have grown as a person, and I've helped other people grow too. So it's been a really thrilling adventure.
Well, it sounds like you all are great humans and extremely realistic about your company and care a lot about it. We're almost at the end of our time here, but I do have one more question before we start wrapping up, which is there anything that y'all can tease for the future for people who are out there who may want to check out Elderwood?
Yeah, I think there's stuff we can tease. I mean, before we tease stuff, I should tell people that we're definitely a little bit slow as a company. So when we talk about concepts, it's like it takes a while to bring them to the table. And part of that is we're getting more and more thorough about executing concepts. But we've been having discussions about DM screens for 6 months or so, and we're actually scheduled to start making some prototypes next month. So that's something that could come to fruition this year. And again, kind of like the board games, it's like if we get somewhere by April and we don't really like it, it's like, yeah, we're just gonna stop. so so no promises, but that's definitely something that's on the docket. And we did our miniature spell books last year, which have been awesome, and we've been fulfilling that Kickstarter, like literally right now. And we may end up doing larger spell books too. We field a lot of requests for people who want spell books that can fit their D&D books and fit their full character sheet. And that's definitely, it would be a more expensive product, which we've never really tackled something that's in the like hundreds of dollars range to make. And I feel a little anxious about that because like I don't know if the value is there for everybody, or if the value is there for enough people. But those are products that I think are on our docket. And Dan, do you have any other ones that we've been talking about that you want to add?
No, I mean, we have our list, and then if Quentin and I both aren't excited about a product, it's very rare that we'll make it. So I have I have a pretty long list of stuff that I would love to do or love to experiment with. But if it doesn't immediately incite, some kind of like green with envy kind of reaction from Quentin, then often those projects get triaged for other projects that do, incite that. And there's plenty on the list. I feel like we periodically go through our like list of, what are the 5 or 6 next products we would do. And that list often grows and shrinks a tiny bit, but yeah. That is to say, you know what? I could have just simply said, no, that was a great answer, Quentin. That's too many words. I apologize.
It sounds very cool. If I may, Dice Ballistas, I think, would be an amazing addition to the Dice Catapult. Something that launches even faster and harder, maybe with like a thick rubber band. You could really welt your players. That would be great.
I designed a dice ballista that fired. I mean, it's the same size as the catapult roughly, and it fired so hard it broke it broke the thing that it was.
Oh no.
But we never produced them en masse, or even I never even got to the finished stage. It just the mechanism was in place. It was supposed to be for a toy you would play with to launch a die along a marble track against gravity and stuff like that. But yeah, we could probably try to make one next time I'm in town. Send you one.
Well, don't harm anyone with that. In the meantime, where can people find you on the internet, Dan?
Well, we are always located and receptive to visitors at elderwoodacademy.com. Or if you just want to chat with us, you can always email info@elderwoodacademy.com, and both of us regularly will check in on what's going on there and respond, or someone will tug our sleeve and be like, hey, there's someone who wants to chat with you.
And how about you, Quentin? Is there anywhere else people should go if they want to find you?
Yeah. So conventions are another great place to find and meet us. And we're going to be at PAX East coming up in about a month. And we'll be at Emerald City Comic-Con following that. And then we're really excited in April to be at our first WonderCon Anaheim. And we're also super stoked to be in the first edition of Burning Cat, brought to you by Exploding Kittens. And that'll be in May in Portland. And I'm particularly excited for that. I know it's new, so I'm not entirely sure how big or small the show is going to be, but they're really focusing on bringing a experiential experience for people. That's a great phrase, experiential experience. They're really trying to make something that's fun on the floor, on the vendor floor, rather than just what you see at most conventions, which is people selling stuff. So we're going to be bringing some cool things to Burning Cat, which hopefully people can enjoy and spend some time doing, regardless of whether you want to spend money or not. So, but yeah, conventions are a great place to get a chance to meet us and the people who work here. So.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's really, really cool. Well, I cannot wait to check that out and hear more about everything that is going on with all of you. Thank you so much for joining me today on Tabletop Babble. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having us. Yeah, this has been great.
That was a great interview with Dan and Quentin. People, if you want to support Tabletop Babble, guess what? You can head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star rating. Heck, leave us a review. If you do, I'll read it out loud if it's got 5 stars attached to it. Guess what? If you're listening in Apple Podcasts right now, it'll take you 2 seconds to just click over to your app and boop, leave us 5 stars. So please, we would super duper appreciate that. So, if you are listening, I really want you to do it because I've run out of fun messages, and I'd like to give people fun messages from you during this troubled time. And hey, if you want to support the show financially, you can at patreon.com/Intricasso. That's patreon.com/Intricasso. We got tons of rewards over there. All right, people, you can follow me on Twitter at James Intricasso. That's at JamesIntrocasso. Also, check out my blog, worldbuilderblog.com, for all the cool game design stuff I'm doing. I'm updating it with articles and previews of my dad's Monster Manual, which is this cool project that I'm working on my dad, rewriting the Monster Manual with him. It's really extremely fun, so you should definitely go check it out. Tabletop Babble is a show on the Don't Split the Podcast Network, edited by Nate Pausenga. You can find out more at don'tsplitthepodcastnetwork.com, which I founded with Rudy Basso. Remember, RPGs are like sex.
Hey, it's Mike Shea of Sly Flourish and author of The Lazy Dungeon Master and Sly Flourish's Fantastic Locations. My show, The DM's Deep Dive on the Don't Split the Podcast Network, features a one-on-one discussion with guests like Sean Merwin, Enrique Bertrand, Teo Sabadia, and more. Once a month, we dive deep into a single D&D topic and answer your burning DM questions. Watch us live on Twitch, on YouTube, or on our podcast on the Don't Split the Podcast Network. Let's dive deep.